and have a seat over here, please, sir. Once you're situated, just make sure the mic's kind of aimed at your chin, and then make sure the light is on. Okay, you may go ahead, Ms. Sorgan.
Thank you, Your Honor. Would you please state your name and spell your last name for the record?
Dale Maixner, M-A-I-X-N-E-R.
Are you currently employed?
I am not. I'm retired.
Okay. When did you retire?
I retired from the State Bureau of Criminal Investigation in June of 2016.
Now, you said you retired from the State Bureau of Criminal Investigation. What is that?
The State Bureau of Criminal Investigation is an agency under the North Dakota Attorney General's office, and our main duties are assisting local agencies in whatever investigations they may run into.
Are you an agency of origin?
Excuse me?
Are you the first agency on the scene for investigations?
Normally, the local agencies are the first individuals on the scene, and they in turn determine if they're going to need additional assistance, at which point they would contact our office.
Okay. At the time that you retired in June of 2016, how many BCI agents were there throughout the state, if you know?
I would say approximately 30.
And that's for the entire state of North Dakota?
That's correct.
Okay. How are your assignments divvied up in BCI?
Each agent has a supervisory agent that, for each area, I'm sorry. I worked out of Minot, so I was mainly responsible for the northwest corner of the state, even though I did work over the remainder of the state at times. We had some agents that worked mainly drug investigations, and then we had some like myself that mainly worked investigations other than drugs.
Okay. What kind of investigations did you typically handle?
I typically handled anywhere from burglary, business burglaries, to sexual assaults, to child abuse, to homicides, to suspicious deaths that turned out to be suicides, anything along that line.
How long had you been with BCI before you retired?
I had been with the Attorney General's office for 37 years.
Okay. Now, you didn't necessarily state that you were with BCI that whole 37 years. Can you explain why that was?
When I was first hired by the Attorney General's office, which was in 1979, a new unit had just been started, which was called the Drug Enforcement Unit. I was one of the first 7 agents that were hired to staff that unit. Okay. After that, I spent 5 years on the Drug Enforcement Unit, approximately 10 years on the Drug Enforcement Unit before we were combined with the State Bureau of Criminal Investigation, so we became one unit. Both of us had been under the Attorney General's office, but they felt it was better to combine the two of us, so we all were one unit at that time.
Okay. And approximately when did that combination happen?
I want to say at the end of the 1980s, probably 1988, 1989.
Okay. Had you worked anywhere in law enforcement before you joined under the Attorney General's office?
Yes, I did.
Where was that?
I started my law enforcement career here in Grand Forks. I was hired by the Grand Forks Police Department in 1974, and while on the police department, the first 2.5 years I spent in uniform. Then I was transferred over to the investigative division and worked mainly drug work. And then for the last year, I was promoted to sergeant and went back to uniform.
Okay. So we've heard some about your experience. Can you tell us about your education and training?
I graduated from the University of North Dakota in 1974 with a degree in business and public administration, dealing mainly with police administration. While employed in law enforcement, I compiled approximately 3,500, 3,600 hours of specialized training.
Okay. And what was that specialized training in?
The initial training, of course, was the basic training that all law enforcement goes through. Following that, there was training in photography, firearms, of course. Once I started with the Attorney General's office, I got further training in homicide investigations, arson investigations, sexual assault investigations, again, more photography, a lot of training in interviewing. I attended the DEA National Academy, the FBI National Academy, and an arson academy.
During the course of your career, approximately how many homicide investigations have you participated in?
I would guess somewhere in the neighborhood of 50 homicide investigations, give or take, that I had some part in. That may have not been the actual investigation. It may have been crime scene processing, reviewing investigations, things along that line. But I feel that somewhere in the neighborhood of 50.
Okay. Do you recall assisting the Minot Police Department with the murder of Anita Knutson?
I do.
Okay. And are you aware of how Minot PD reached out to BCI?
I believe they had contacted the BCI office, and during that first week of the investigation, I was not present. I was on leave and on the eastern part of the state, but there were, I believe, 2 or 3 other BCI agents that assisted during that week.
And do you recall who those BCI agents were?
Mike Marcus would have been one of them, and other than that, I wouldn't know.
When did you become involved with the investigation?
I became involved in the following week, the following Monday, which I believe would have been like the 10th or 11th of June.
And what was your involvement?
At that time, the police department requested that I conduct follow-up interviews with some of the individuals that they had initially interviewed.
Okay. And do you recall who they asked you to do follow-up interviews for?
One of them was Jose Rodriguez, another was a Michael Van, and then Nicole Thomas at the time.
And did you conduct those interviews?
I did.
Commissioner Prochotter?
You may.
Agent Maixner, I'm just going to ask you to hold on to that for a second because I'm going to back up a second here. You conducted those follow-up interviews in June of 2007. Did you have any subsequent involvement with this case after that?
Yes, I conducted a number of interviews in this investigation up through approximately 2010, 2011.
Okay. And specifically drawing your attention to May 6, 2010, did you conduct another interview?
Yes.
And who was that of?
That was of Nicole Thomas.
Okay. I'm going to direct your attention to what's been marked as State's Exhibit 19 for identification, 30-page document. Do you recognize that?
Yes, this was shown to me before.
Okay. And what is that document?
This is a transcript of the interview that I conducted on May 6th of 2010 of Nicole Thomas.
Okay. And your interviews when you did these were recorded, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And for the purpose of being transcribed later?
Yes, if need be. They weren't all transcribed, but if they needed to be transcribed, they were.
Okay. And I think we've indicated this was a 30-page transcript, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Would you expect to remember all 30 pages of what you talked about with somebody if it wasn't transcribed?
No, I would not.
And you've reviewed this. If you also reviewed the audio recording that transcript was made from?
I have.
Okay. And this is true and accurate, is that correct?
You told me it was, so I haven't been able to compare it to the transcript.
Okay.
Or to the recording.
Okay. Do you have any reason to believe that it's not?
I do not.
Okay. State moves to introduce Exhibit 19.
Mr. Sand.
Your Honor, I'm going to maintain my last objection from the last transcripts. It'll be the same as the best evidence rule. I assume the court will have the same ruling, but I want to put it on the record that I do object, and I believe Mr. Maixner's here, and the best evidence will be his testimony.
The court will receive Plaintiff's Exhibit 19 over your objection.
Thank you. And Agent Maixner, as you indicated, you wouldn't be expected to remember that. Is that correct?
No, especially after this amount of time.
Okay. How long ago was that interview?
Well, that was 15 years ago.
Okay. And you've since retired, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. At the time that you retired, had all of your cases closed?
Yes, I believe they have. I believe this is my only open case, at least open homicide that I was involved in.
What would you expect other officers to do with open cases when you retire?
Well, they become, especially with homicides, they become what's known as cold cases. And as in the past I had been responsible for investigating other cold cases, I would think that someone would continue investigating this case in the future until it's resolved.
I have no more questions for Agent Maixner.
Mr. Sand.
Just a couple of brief ones, Your Honor.
All right.
Agent Maixner, did you have a chance to review your reports before you came in today?
Yes.
Okay. Is it true that on April 14th, 2009, it was a conference call that you were on with the FBI?
Yes.
Isn't it true that the result of that was that call was that the FBI felt that there needed to be more research done into the subjects from Wolf Point because of the knife?
I recall that in my report. That's what it said.
That's all I got. Thank you.
Any other questions, Ms. Sorgan?
Just briefly, Your Honor. Agent Maixner, that meeting, conference call occurred October 14th, 2009. Is that right?
I believe that's when it occurred.
Okay. And so the information that was conveyed to the FBI would have been current through what date?
Up until that point when we spoke with them.
So if information came after that date, the FBI wouldn't have been privy to it. Is that correct?
Not to my knowledge, unless someone else notified them.
Okay. Thank you. Nothing further.
Mr. Sand, anything else?
Nothing else, Your Honor.
Ms. Sorgan, is this witness under subpoena?
He is.
Is he excused from that subpoena?
He's excused from the state subpoena.
Mr. Sand?
Yeah, I believe we have under subpoena and we're in contact with Mr.
All right.
Maixner,
You're
so.
not excused from their subpoena then. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next witness, Ms. Sorgan.
Yes, Your Honor. State calls Dr. Marianne Sens. You can just leave that right there, Dale. Thank you.